Hey guys, Brigitte here with San Diego Seed Company, and a final update on our carrot seeds. Well, we had to leave for 3 weeks and this is what happens. So, nice little teachable moment here. I'm gonna be vulnerable and I'm gonna be real and human. Things happen. Here's a good example of what happens when you leave something that is potted oh, get out of here. When you leave something potted unattended. So I had to leave suddenly and we weren't able to take care of this. And this is a very small pot and it dried out very quickly. And I want to show you a couple different factors here. One, it's a small pot. There's not very much mass here to hold on to moisture. Two, it's a terracotta pot, which means that the water can wick away very easily. Three, it's on concrete, which means that this concrete heats up, this heats up, which further exacerbates the evaporation of the moisture from the soil. So these dried out very quickly, and I mean, you can tell by the way it's just pulling away from the pot that it dried up and everything died. So do not fear. This is why we succession plant on our farm, because things happen and you always want to have a backup plan. I've got some more carrots that I can show you over here. And I'm going to show you the difference between carrots planted in a pot versus in ground. So come on. And you know what I just realized? That actually it's not my fault that those carrots died. It's my videographer's fault, Jeff, because he's the one who made me plant them in the little tiny pot. I'm here to make that process a whole lot easier. We've got a nice little setup here because my cameraman was too lazy to go into the garden, so he wanted to have a nice close-up, but I have to agree with him. This way I can really show you the very specifics that you need to know about seed starting. He knew I was gone and he didn't come over and check on them, so he's the reason why they're dead. Anyways, so have no fear. We've got some beautiful right here. That was a good little rhyme. So these carrots were direct sown in the ground here, and you can see that we've gone in and we've thinned them very nicely. We've got really good spacing here. They look fabulous. And now, these did not dry out because they're on irrigation. Another reason why irrigation can be so helpful on the farm, automatic irrigation that is. And also much larger sponge of soil that's gonna hold on to moisture, and so it's gonna dry out far less quickly than in a pot. So these guys actually look really good, and I'm just gonna let them grow. We have done the work of thinning them. And you can tell from what we planted in the pot to what's planted here that these have a lot more spacing. And there's two reasons for that. One, I wasn't as heavy-handed when I planted them. And two, we've gone through and we've thinned them quite a bit. So when I planted them, I tried to be a little more meticulous about where I put the seeds. And then we've already thinned them. So they look really good, and I keep them underneath the row cover. Even though we don't have a threat of frost or anything coming, I like to keep the row cover over the carrots because it holds in moisture. It keeps off insects. If you live in an area where you get flea beetles and other things, you can use the row cover to simply keep insects off your crops, which is really helpful. Okay, so since this is the last update on our carrots, I'm gonna tell you what you need to expect or stay tuned for. So I'm gonna let these guys grow. They're gonna grow well into the spring. You wanna keep them well watered. So these are actually maybe a little on the dry side. I can water a little bit more here, but you really don't want them to completely dry out. It's gonna lead to carrots that are fibrous and just really not that tasty. They are thinned really nicely, but I might go in here and thin again in a few weeks when they're a little bit bigger. You can't eat the ones that you thin. Just because they're tiny doesn't mean they're not delicious. I usually just give them a rinse. I cut off the tops and I usually throw them in my smoothie, because when they're really small, they're very tender and they blend really well. So don't waste that. So yeah, we're just gonna let these guys grow. I wanna make sure they've got plenty of moisture on them. I'm gonna keep them covered, and then we'll harvest them this spring. So when do you harvest these? Well, it depends on the variety. Smaller varieties like baby carrots, chantenays that are really small, they usually ripen a little bit quicker because they don't have as big of a carrot to grow. But when in doubt, check your seed packet and check the days to maturity and mark it on your calendar so that you know. Carrots are pretty simple in that you harvest them whenever they're at a size in which you want to eat them. So it doesn't mean that you have to harvest them right on the days to maturity deadline. If they're baby carrots and they look good and you want to harvest them, harvest them. If you want to leave them in the ground for a while and let them get bigger, you absolutely can. You just don't want them to get so big that they're fibrous and not very tasty, or insects are really starting to chew on them and eat them. So stay tuned for our March garden tour, where you can see how everything is growing in our spring garden.